of it, except for the second paragraph, where it's bolded, it says council orientation session would be set for council as soon as possible.
Do we have a copy?
There should be an attachment to the agenda.
I don't have anything to open up.
Did you log in? Are you logged in?
Mhm.
I got it on mine.
There's nothing in blue there
Okay, yours
or
is?
red.
Okay.
There you go.
Did you get her copy?
Oh,
Online? Is your copy online?
just,
Yeah, it's right here. I got mine.
oh, I got it in blue now. I have it.
Very good.
Everybody's got reference in front of them? Okay, take it away.
Okay, so just that second paragraph down, I bolded it, it says council, because that's one of the things that needs to be done. The rest of this report is just background information. Page 2 is background information. I'm sure you've all read it. The focus of day 1.
Read it, I just got it.
Yeah. Page 3 is just the day 1, the stuff that we went over.
Mhm.
But at the bottom of page 3 is about the committees of council. That's what we're going to focus on tonight. So council, I gave you an overview of the types, roles, and functions of the committee within the org structure. Then on page 4, this is a brand new one. I don't know that they have this. I just wrote this one up today in the parking lot of the optometrist in Woodstock. Sitting out there waiting for Burton. My brand new iPad works. Got to my office and turned my computer on, and there was my report already. I'm so amazed at technology, and I actually know how to use it. So council reviewed the existing WIFIN council standing committee roster for the purpose of introducing the concept of committees of council as an interim operating measure during the pandemic period. The concept was to reduce the number of committees from 10, we have 10 standing committees, to sit down to 6. The idea is to have council members with experience pair up with council members that lack experience or on council. I wanted to put newbies in there, but I couldn't explain this. The main notion of this was to bring the history on topics to the present day for council consideration. The process, so what you did at the training was a process started with first to identify which committees from the list are appropriate, which committees are not, and finally how the committees can be amalgamated for suitability. So this is what I added today, the role in, and it's not in your stuff, I'm just gonna have to read it. It's called the role and the function of the interim committees. The only members, this is just to further explain the concept. The only members on each committee would be the 2 council members. So there's only 2 members on each committee. Their function is to identify, in conjunction with the CEO and department heads or supervisors, agenda items that require council approval. Committee members' role will be to ensure all the information required for council decisions is prepared. For example, statement of need, background information, applicable policy reference, or budgetary considerations. Those are the kinds of things that would be prepared for council. The agenda for the committees will be identified by a CEO and staff. Each department manager or supervisor will attend for their time slot. So what's going to happen is there are two committee members are going to say Ron and Keenan are going to be on one committee, and they'll start their meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning or whatever time you guys set. And James will have identified that there's four committees need some issues addressed. So at 9 o'clock, committee number 1 comes in. 10 o'clock, committee number 2, 11 o'clock, committee number 3. That's how we see it working. So each will attend for their time slot, present their request, and leave the meeting. In essence, the committee will deal with various issues as they arise. This process is interim. The goal is to ensure issues are identified and decisions are reached at the council table in a timely manner. Any questions on that part? Can I ask Charlie? Next page.
Marcia?
Okay. So the CEO identifies agenda items
Yeah, and the department head, so.
and the
Okay.
department or supervisor. So they bring items before a committee of
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
elected counselors
Yeah.
who have a very clear understanding of what their expertise is. And they make recommendations to who?
To council.
To council.
Goes from department head to the committee to council. And really, in essence, what you're really gonna be operating like these two people are you're gonna be operating like a policy advisor. You're gonna be collecting all the information. Well, actually, you won't do the work. The department head will do the work. You will just give them direction on the kind of questions you'll need answered. Because I sit at this table and I hear a lot of questions every time there's an issue. There's a lot of questions, so items have to be sent back. So what are the kind of questions that council would ask? Are the kind of things these committees would come up with? Am I way up to lunch on this one? Yes.
No,
Mhm.
no, I
Yeah.
think it's a process that allows for a couple of things. It allows for the council members sitting on these committees to get quite knowledgeable on the programs that they have responsibility for. They get knowledgeable on the various issues that are arising on a day-to-day basis that needs like some type of action or resolution. They would then take it to James into the committee
That's right.
for a recommendation that would be brought back to the council for ratification or additional discussion with the committee of the whole.
Yeah.
James?
Well, what I like about it is it's different. It's, I think, adaptive to COVID. Because it allows us to meet in smaller groups, which is ideal.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's a bit of a reset from where we were going last term with the committee structure. And one thing I experienced on a regular basis was the HR committee and finance committee both had quite a few members of council. And there was some overlap as well. And what I would find is there were a number of issues that we would deal with in both of those committees. So we would have the same debate with some of the same counselors in HR and then again in finance. And then let's say it was a public works issue, we'd have that same discussion again in the public works committee. And then it would go to council and we'd have it again. So it certainly wasn't efficient.
Yeah.
So, you know what, definitely this is something new, but I think we're trying.
Ron and Elaine?
Yeah, it's cool kind of having something different, but I think what would save it was a suggestion before the last time. And no, I wasn't part of finance and HR. I was part of HR and finance or public works, so I wasn't asking those questions. So anyway, that being said, I think what helps is a fact sheet or something along that line to say where those committees are, where they've been and what they've done to date as well, accounting those, so that we're not sitting there, trying to brief at that hour during those minutes on what's been done and what their directive or what they're supposed to be doing. Those all need to be part and parcel of either orientation or just a briefing package for them to be able to see what has gone on to move forward.
That's a good question, and I see that you could request that from the departments. Why can't they prepare that?
If I may, we have at different times, but it seems to fail for whatever reason, and that's beyond us as politicals, because when we're as a table, we have power to direct the CEO or the DO at the time, but that seems to fall over the edge and it doesn't get delivered, and that's part of the problem. It has to happen at that level. It has to be mandated communicate to the CEO or the director of operations or whatever they are now, directors, to get that from their program people, to show the newbies or people where we're at, and even visitors at times, because we get all these same questions that we're debating either at this table or at the committee table, and it saves a lot of time.
There's actually, oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
there's actually a process. You can even have a template for briefing note preparation, because this is it, what you'll be developing. And so there's even a series of, like there's a template, so all the different components of a briefing note, that's the kind of information you're looking for. That can be sent to the department heads in advance. And then they'll know, okay, they're gonna require this kind of background information. It just, to me, it speeds up the whole process, and the information is this, that's shared is the same at each level.
Okay, over to Elaine.
So does this take the community out of the committees?
Only on the interim, just during the pandemic.
Just during the
Oh,
pandemic.
pandemic.
Marcia.
How long will that be?
I think what we're missing is we raise issues here and through the minutes, it always goes to James. But we don't have the action plan and who's doing what and the timeline to follow, so that when our members call us and I raised an issue, where is it? I don't know. So that piece is missing. I guess that's what would help me. I know James has all that information up here, but
And I see that particular piece being one of the later stages of a strategic plan, where once you have those goals and objectives of measures, it would be my job to make sure there's a document in place where you can see whether we're meeting those objectives, that sort of thing, tracking all the different objectives laid out.
I think the most important one is the community needs. Who's addressing those? Like, this is all the organizational stuff, but when the community bring us issues, where do we go and who's actioning it?
Well, there's a process in your organization structure. When they bring you an issue, you determine which department addresses that. And then then it goes to the department and it goes to James, and then it comes to council. There's a process. I think that's in the handbook. That
Well,
process, what used to be anyway.
If we knew what the programs did, we would be able to do that, but I think that's the missing piece. We really need a better,
Well, let's see, that's the orientation you've been asking for, right?
Well, with that, I think what you need is just a 3-page overview, I guess, of the program and org chart and stuff like that. And maybe another single page on current projects and issues, I guess, with that department. So it gives you a heads up on what their concerns are and what they're currently working on. And ideally, the real interface with the community, it should be with the staff level. Politicians should not be interfering with HR matters and stuff like that. There's proper channels that have to be followed to address those types of issues. When we start interfering, we're intervening, I guess, on HR matters, et cetera, like that, then it becomes very problematic in terms of, disregarding policies, et cetera, like that, and it makes for inconsistent decision making. And what we want to do is try to solidify and establish protocols to deal with community members' issues. There's a proper channel to take these and to have them resolved. And it would be up to James and the department head to look at those action plans to make sure that their issues are covered off in whatever department it might be, whether it's education or health or whatever.
ideally.
There's just an observation. I like the process, and there's two key components that are going on here. One is that we shouldn't become the programs and departments at this table. And that's when we take community requests, if we overlook the operations or the departments and programs, then that's exactly what we become. We become part of the operation. We become administrators or service deliverers. And I'm not saying to negate the need or unaddressed any needs, but this basically requires the departments to account for what they've done for those community needs and make sure that they're in play. And it also addresses the shortfall administratively. This process it's those two council members, or essentially portfolios or committees of two of council. The other thing that is missing at this table continuously, I like the idea of the template of briefing notes and so on, but the thing that's missing that actually makes us politicians, right now we're not politicians, we're elected to be politicians. But if you look at the agenda, it's almost totally operational.
Yep.
At least 95% of our agenda is operations. We're not politicians. We haven't got there yet. So it's not a political table or a policy table until this process addresses the shortfalls in relation to briefing notes, lobby packages that chief and council, that those two councils can bring to the table. This is a lobby initiative that we have to conduct in order to secure additional resources for this area of need in the community. So, right, I can see this as actually being a process or a trigger to produce those lobby packages, so we can actually do our political role. So those are the two things that I see. So when I run for council, I want to get into the political arena. That's just that's my desire to do that. But you never get there. You never get past the administration or the operation, which is a need. Obviously, you do the best you can, but our time and energy would be best to be politicians. Those are a few observations, and I like the process.
Yeah, if I might pick up on that, it gives us opportunity at the council table here to discuss the policy direction in terms of making responses to whatever's coming down from Indian Affairs or the province, whether it's we want some input and we want some direction in terms of a fishing agreement, or we want to have a discussion on land claim settlement, or our problems with the current government policy. With that will allow us to put forward position papers at the Chiefs of Ontario level or at the AFN level, describing our desired change to land claim settlements and all these other things. More dollars for health based on our stats and needs, I guess. And that's where we start to get some traction, I guess, in terms of addressing needs at the grassroots level, because that's where our policies will start to be formulated. We'll start discussing policy direction, program direction here, as opposed to being the final rubber stamp on a budget or a committee decision to buy more chairs or look at all these other things that we're doing now in terms of doing just a glorified piece of it, as Bergman described, in terms of achieving change with the other governmental agencies around us. And that's how we make progress. Otherwise, we're just top-level administrators dealing with 95% of our time, dealing with those types of minutes, etc.
And lowly paid.
Yeah.
One of the questions you may ask of the department heads is to identify gaps in services. You can ask them to identify gaps in their policy, in their implementation policy. Like, is there somebody going to the department, going to their door? I can't service you. You don't fall within my guidelines. I can't I can't fund this because it doesn't fall within my guidelines. Those are the kinds of things they need to start to identify. And then when they identify them, it hits James's table, and then it comes to council, and that's part of your lobbying package and part of your fundraising development. So it starts at the community level, goes to the department, goes to the senior managers, and then it hits the state. That's how we went in. On to the next page. Yep.
Elaine?
How are we gonna, get this out to the community so that they understand this and that it's only for during the pandemic, and what is our plan after the pandemic?
James?
We can work on a communications plan there to make sure, we're using all of our channels so that we use them.
Or there?
He lives for it.
Yeah.
He looks for that.
We're trying something.
Derek's our spin doctor and all forms of media there.
You're ready to go on to the next page?
Yep.
This is a table.
Okay.
I got one question here. So there's 6 committees.
Yeah.
And there's one counselor that's gonna oversee another counselor. How do you justify that? I know this is my first term as in a political standing, but I bring a lot to the table. I have 15 years of being a supervisor. I have 6 years in college. I have a lot of education and resources to pull from, and I'm tired of working for people. I don't want to be that dog on a leash, getting pulled around. So, by that stance, I believe that 2 counselors on that should be looked at as equal.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
is.
There's no senior, the only reason I use the word senior counselors is counselors that have experience sitting on council, and then there's people that don't have experience, so those are the 2, so you're kind of training each other.
Yeah, I was just getting confused every time I hear that. I start thinking I'm still wet behind the ears here.
No,
But
no,
that is
it just has to do with experience on council, as a council member.
Yeah,
And then you'll have additional training in the process.
my whole life has been political.
The other part or other key component that we're considering putting on board is a policy analyst that would help with the various committees to identify position papers and to construct those and to, I guess, again, allow for our delegates to go out to the various meetings and stuff like that and say, this is the position of Walpole Island First Nation in terms of this issue or that issue. And we have never done that in the past. So it's opening up a greater amount of opportunity for counselors to articulate our issues and to make our presence known and what our issues are, particular to this, particular to our territory here. And that's never happened in the past.
I may have some information to share with James on, we might be able to get some summer post-secondary students. Alethea sent me, she hasn't given me the whole thing, but who would just do that exact thing, policy review, policy analyst. As soon as I get that, I'll pass it to you, James. These students generally do it for experience, but it would be nice to pay them, and this would be all online because they're from Toronto. So I'll get that to you when I get it.
Carry on.
Okay, on the last page of the committees is this table. It's the new committee name. This is what the council came up with during the training. And then on the right is the committees that would be incorporated into that new committee. So the first one is administrative operations, and I sure hope I got this right. Because some of them I had to kind of plug in on my, just for a little, and I talked about it too. Finance, so administrative operations is finance management, human resource management. Community, the second one is community infrastructure. It's capital planning, lands, public works, sports complex, housing, natural resources, for example, marsh management, and economic development. Let me know if we plug these in the wrong place, if they're plugged in the wrong place. The next one is justice and governance. This is the land claims and rights, band rep, and the court, and somebody put on there the court system, develop our court system. And then the fourth one is community well-being, and lifelong learning services. I put lifelong learning services, lifelong learning. Oh, I didn't even put learning, it should be learning in there. I wanted, my first thought was cradle to grave, but then there's life before the cradle. So, social services, and that includes all the family services, education, includes the library, all the school programs, language and culture, and then health and youth and recreation. So Homeland Security focuses on the bylaws, the police, and the fire. Intergovernmental affairs, revenue generation, the heritage center, and sovereignty building. And that includes that round table. Well, actually, that's a separate thing. So any questions on how?
Elaine?
Where does employment and training fall under here?
Any help here?
Well, it could fall on lifelong learning.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Because right now, they are within the social program,
Okay.
and it's always been a question of
Whether
to lifelong learning.
What's it called, employment?
Employment and training.
E&T.
Okay.
Marcia?
So
I should know it.
our organization structure is draft right now. We haven't approved that, correct? But there are directors that oversee a number of programs in the 4 areas, in the lifelong learning, community wellness, whatever, director of education. This circle of people with the 2 counselors potentially would just be meeting with the directors that oversee their programs, correct?
I think it's going to depend on the issue. So those directors are at my disposal so that I don't have to be in all places at once. But I would be accountable for implementing the direction from council and facilitating that relationship in the committees. So I wouldn't say, well, now there's a health director, I no longer need to know what's going on in this committee. But at the same time, you would have somebody with the experience and the level of responsibility that they can report directly to the committee.
Directly to who? Report directly to?
To the committee.
Where would addictions fall under here? Community well-being, lifelong services, or
Social,
Yeah.
social, yeah.
I think part and parcel of this as well, I think that we can have a review period to see how it's working, like after 6 months, to see how it is, how effective it is. If we have to make changes, then let's make changes to it. You know?
Where's our resource protection on here? And our Wi-Fi employees, and we should have some sort of internal affairs where our employees feel comfortable coming to address some of their concerns.
That'd be number 1.
One for employees,
Yeah,
and then,
what about resource?
We talked about putting that in 5.
In 5?
5?
Yep.
Okay, resource, oh yeah, that's it.
Resource, yeah.
What was the other one?
resource protection and then our Wi-Fi workers.
And Wi-Fi, I think that was gonna go under administration as well.
Yeah.
Number one.
Is there a Wi-Fi committee?
I got a question for you, James. Is there a way to get them to do evening house calls? Like a lot of people are at work and then sometimes they're not home during the day. Is there a person that we could put on in the afternoon to service Wi-Fi?
That's something we talked about in terms of, it would require hiring another person.
Okay,
So that's a possibility, but certainly we can't do that with staff we have.
yeah.
They're stretched very thin.
Marcia?
Remember we talked about a phone number that community members can call if they have concerns? Are we to that point where, so I, as a counselor, they call me and I say, okay, we set up a process to get these, your concerns addressed, so that we're not being, we're not interfering with the operationals, with the organization at all. We'll stay political and lobbying and stuff like that. But we have to put something in place now so the community's concerns can be addressed by somebody.
Well, there's two streams there. One is that you'd have two batches. One, obviously, there's concerns from community that deal with band operations or problems with the department, whether it's public works or you're having a problem getting an application for Casino Rama or funding application for employment and training. That would be purely operational and it'll go in that stream. There's other issues, I guess, that would be raised on a more political level. Again, that would be identified with a committee function. But again, that would be highlighted at the council table here, whether it's something to dealing with children protection services and stuff like that. That might be worthy of a discussion with the council as a whole in terms of establishing ban policy for that particular area there.
If you're interested.
And I feel like it's a bit of a digression, but where we're headed in terms of a single phone number would be more of a technology solution.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at is VoIP, which is what most phones use, but our corporate phones currently don't use that. They use a hardwired Bell connection. So with VoIP, you can link all of the telephone systems within each department. So you can have a central operator and a central automated operator with general delivery mailbox. And it becomes much easier for members to triage their issues with the telephone system. There's things like a 311, but I find it takes years for a community to start using that and you never get full uptake. But something like a VoIP between an organization like ours with many satellite buildings is great for customer service because you don't have to worry. It's, in this day and age, it's very frustrating to be told you have to write down another number.
Right.
Yeah, I just call the person in government. Why do I have to call somebody else? So that's, it bridges that.
Session report.
Yeah.
With the revenue discussion, new committee structure. Roles and functions of that should be included in your. Okay, that's where we are with this proposed process. The next step would be for counselors to do a couple of things, I guess. I think that you would select one or two of the committees that you would want to be on, and maybe a couple of B selections as well. And then we would bring all of those selections back to the council. And by discussion and sorting out here, we would appoint people to the various responsibilities that they feel comfortable with. I think there's some very logical fits here in terms of some of the areas, and we'll see how that goes.
If you don't, then I'll appoint you. I'll appoint you.
James?
Could we do something simple like have counselors send their top 3 choices to Alicia?
Sure.
Then we arm wrestle after that?
Are those 2 out of 3 falls or something?
I'd like to work with our housing and market development.
So you
I'd
can,
like to put my expertise as a carpenter into our housing and my duck hunting skills and my knowledge into that.
so are you asking us for some of our background? Or are you just wanting names or say
Just your names will do there. I don't think we'll.
of the,
I think you'll be comfortable in identifying yourself with some of the proposed activities there, where you're best suited.
If everyone has the same top three, then we'll have to find another way forward, but we may get what we need out of everybody just listing their top three and sending them to Alicia. Have them email to Alicia. So
Yeah, you make that decision.
Oh,
tonight,
okay.
Roll it over and email your decision to
right now?
Alicia there, then we'll come back and have another discussion on appointments.
Okay,
But Cody's already indicated his preference there, and maybe he has a couple more as well.
so we'll send these to Alicia
Yep.
this week.
Yep, as soon as
And-
possible.
Next steps, setting dates for
Oh,
orientation,
yeah, that's on the last page of the report.
folding up your stuff
Well, that's
already.
up to you guys, right? That's not, there's just your.
It's a matter of scheduling. Yeah, it's a matter
Yeah.
of scheduling now.
Yeah.
Ron?
I guess like being involved with some of the things I have in the past, and the present, I kind of find myself torn just too. And one is because one split up and that's the sovereignty or the governance table, and I see that under number 6. And historically, we carry the land claims group as well. So I'd like to still be part of that, but I also like the justice and the governance and homeland security. But intergovernmental affairs with the revenue generation and sovereignty building is something that interests me as well too, right? So those are my kind of something I like. And,
That's the way to do it. Get first dibs.
yeah. Those are the ones that I like HR too, but
No, there's still- Lucille just identified an important note here that this is not going to eliminate any need for the task forces that we identified as well.
These are still on,
Oh, those are still on, yeah.
okay. Got it.
So there's a lot of work to do.
Actually, and I just want to, in closing, I just want to say that I was quite impressed with the 6 titles that you came up with, because it showed me that you're, like, this council is forward-looking, looking forward and forward planning. It falls in line with government governance management that we have to identify as you go along. Anyway.
Okay, I want to thank Lucy for that presentation. Can we have a mover and seconder for the presentation on committee structures as part of the planning release? Second by Lyle. All those in favor? Send information on to Alicia. Back there. Elaine?
Before she leaves, are we gonna plan something for orientation? Can we do that now, or do you want to do it later?
We should do it now, right?
Yeah.
Scheduling for orientation? Yep. Worked out with Lucille. You got your planner? It's filling up fast and you're well into August.
My 1 day a week, okay.
James, in the past, has the council received copies of the annotated Indian Act, recent copies, I guess, of that, with all the recent changes?
I think that was in the handbook.
Okay, it's a recent one then,
Yes.
okay. Because I know there's been some recent changes to the Indian Act.
That's in our big binder.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a recent one, is it?
I believe so, but I can have a look.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
All I had in me is wait for
Hmm.
Okay, suggested dates here?
Oh, just another, I hope I didn't overstep my authority as a counselor, but I asked Ally to order that book, Tyler, that 21 Things to Know About the Indian Act. Ally was gonna order that for us, so we each had a copy.
Yep, awesome, that's fine.
Is that okay?
I just want a summary.
It's not a very, it's not.
Yeah, no,
It's a
that
little tiny
book
book.
is a summary. of
Yeah,
the
it
Indian Act.
is.
You'll like it.
Okay.
Jesse agreed with Jesse used to go here when he worked for the union. I used to talk to say, "Well, this is the Yeah.
Got my
I like
calendar.
reading the older ones.
Yeah.
Those weird regulations.
Any dates?
Dates suggested, orientation,
Okay. Just not a Friday.
Are we looking at 2 days or are we breaking it down so that we,
those who want to attend, 2 days. what do
2
you want?
days?
Sure, 2 days.
The 11th and 12th?
The 11th is the regular council meeting. Do you guys need?
We know where you are. As far as I understand, we're going through the blue binder, right? Orientation, that big blue binder.
12th and 13th then?
12th is okay for me, but not the 13th.
I go the 11th.
That's okay.
Oh, that's a council meeting.
Council meeting,
Yeah,
not
okay.
great.
What about the day 4 and 5?
HR meetings are good.
No, that won't work. How long each day?
Depends how many questions we have.
Yeah, I'm on
So
there.
about 3 days.
16-hour day.
It'll be one long continuous session.
18th and 19th.
18th and 19th?
Everybody's made some of that.
Can we do 17th or 19th? 17th and
You're breaking it.
17 and 18?
19th? 17th and 19th.
How about the 24th,
I want to split them.
24th would be better.
Victoria Day?
That's Victoria Day.
It's a holiday, so I can be there.
I'll be around.
Enjoy your day.
I think we should do the 11th and 12th, and I may just have to step out for some of these meetings. But it's like that.
But that's a regular council meeting, you just said.
It is. but-
We could end by 4. Just go right on.
Give everybody an hour and,
It's really hard to spend a whole day on a meeting and then,
do some more meetings.
Did you get back to back? What about
Can we do one and then
May
schedule
10th and
another for
12th?
what?
10th and 12th? How's that for everybody, May 10th and 12th? Because that 11th, you have a council meeting.
I thought you
Can
were
we do 17th and 19th instead, so that we're not bookending that?
Well, let's clarify something here. Not everybody has to attend those. It's voluntary.
What about a Saturday? Are you going to come to the orientation?
I'll come to it, but I'm not coming on no Saturday.
Let's do do 11th and 12th and go into the council meeting, but just make sure we stop at 2 or 3 or something.
There you go.
11,
I don't know.
I can come to the 12th.
can you?
If it was the 11th, nobody said it approved.
So, the 12th, you can come?
17th and 19th. That's excellent.
17 and
Can you
19.
do that? Why, the 19th, 17th and 19th?
What about May 12 and May 19? Because we had to make both, right? We had to make both.
Yep, yep.
There
Perfect.
you go.
May 12th and 19th.
Is that good for you?
10 a.m.
There you go.
12th and 19th.
Okay,
May 12th?
May 12th and 19th.
Can we
Can there
start
be
at
a-
11? Since- I'll have to make part of the beginning.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can there be,
As long, okay, we'll start at 11 if you buy us lunch.
How
11,
about donuts?
No sugar.
You're done.
Okay, time's a wasting here with our desire for action plans here.
so we have,
Tyler,
can there be an option for like an evening meet? Maybe not for everybody, but for me to meet with you that 19th or something? Because I won't be able to make it during the day, obviously.
So 11 and 19?
Maybe Lucille and I should meet and go over the
Okay.
agenda and decide how much time we need. and then come
There
back
you
to
go.
the proposal. Does that
and
be all
get
right?
back to the
because
council.
I'm agreeable
Said 11.
day or night so that our young counselors are able to attend this.
Okay, it's agreed that James and Lucille will work out something and go forward with the,
So no dates about?
No.
12th and 19th.
What?
May 12th and May 19th.
Tentatively.
Tentative?
10 to 3?
I thought.
Pencil it in.
I thought you guys were gonna come up with,
Okay, 12th and
12th and
19th.
19th.
Perfect.
order here. Doggone.
Thank you.
Let's get back on track here. Identify some days or leave it to Lucille and James to come up with some identified dates and take it from there.
I think we have it at 10, 12, and 19. 12 and
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. That's why I recommend for
Okay, getting back on court agenda.
Motion?
We didn't have a motion.
Oh, yeah, motion for those dates there for the planning as identified. Moved by Elaine, second by Cody. All those in favor? That's carried. That was pulling teeth.
I'm opposed, chief.
Tough crowd.
Okay, the presentations, for the balance of my, my report there, there was an education one but that will be raised by, Marcia. There was also another education one with a concern expressed by a student that I want to alert, people with. Her concern is she's a grade 8 student at our day school and that, she's very frustrated, I guess, in terms of the continuing need to have some type of virtual or distant learning. And she's very, very dissatisfied with the level of assistance, I guess, in terms of the teachers providing to them to do their work and to provide guidance or assistance. I think she mentioned she only gets brief time, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, as opposed to schooling arrangements off the reserve that almost are almost like individual tutoring for their students. So, based on the comments she has provided to me, that it appears that our system is falling short, and I was going to call upon Marcia to do an inquiry into that, because as I understand as well, that Dr. Martin is leaving us, and we need some type of investigation on those concerns to address them, especially for our grade 8 students. She bottom lined her concerns was, I'm going to be entering into the high school next year. And I don't feel like I'm prepared to deal with the subject matter or be totally prepared to deal with the challenges of grade 9 as a result of the shortfalls, I guess, with the learning being provided or teaching being provided by our day school. So that's the long and short of that. I wanted to bring that to council's attention, and I was going to ask Marcia if she would follow up on that concern under her already assigned portfolio, I guess, in terms of the education. And I would now like to turn it over to Marcia as well, because there is an additional issue with the operation of the school. Marcia?
The additional one I just spoke with James about, I think is, it's a health and safety issue, definitely. And it has to deal with the kitchen.
Should we
And
go in camera?
are we allowed?